Okay, let's do the second part of this, just the prisoner's dilemma example here. The two videos, and then we're also going to have a Edpuzzle, which is a crash course econ. I don't know if we watched them or not, but it's Mr. Clifford and a lady who works for a Marketplace podcast do crash course econ, which some of you have probably seen Crash Course US. But anyway, it's a really good game theory oligopoly one that they do that will also explain the prisoner's dilemma. I recommend watching these two videos, and I'll put it in Google Classroom, but I recommend watching those two videos first, and then doing this video and the previous one first, and then doing the Edpuzzle. I think it'll make the Edpuzzle make a little more sense. So I'll do my best to explain the prisoner's dilemma. They walk through it again in the Edpuzzle video, and then what's tomorrow? Wednesday. So Thursday, then we'll do some examples. Probably do some type of live stream, Google Chat, maybe Zoom if we're allowed to do that. Anyway, I'll clear all that up tomorrow, but we'll schedule something for Thursday to get together so we can do some live examples. All right, so let's get through this. Prisoner's dilemma, the classic game theory, the classic oligopoly example. Police arrest two students, Kurt and Randy. They suspect both of being involved in a series of robberies. They have enough evidence to put both in jail for 1 year. All right, so they know they can put them in jail for 1 year with what they already have, but they think they did other things that'll give them a much longer sentence, but don't have enough evidence right now for that. So they put them both in separate rooms, okay, like police tend to do, and they give them the following options. Each man has 2 options, which lead to 4 possibilities. If you and your partner both remain silent, you get 1 year. All right, we have you on the 1 year, and you'll end up in jail for 1 year. Okay. So if both remain silent, 1 year. If only you confess, so the other guy keeps his mouth shut, you confess, okay, you go free, and your partner gets 20 years. All right, so you confess to the crime, your partner keeps his mouth shut, all right, you go free, your partner gets 20 years. And I guess we're assuming you're either Kurt or Randy, now that I read how I wrote this. However, if you keep your mouth shut and your partner talks, your partner confesses, okay, you get the 20 years and your partner goes free. And then finally, if you both confess, then you both get 8 years. So there's the fourth possibility. No one talks, everybody gets 1 year. Only you confess, you go free, your partner gets 20. Only your partner confesses, you get 20, your partner goes free, you both confess, you both get 8 years. What you see here, and I'm going to page up so we can see it a little better. What you see up here at the top is, or now at the top, is the heart of oligopoly. There are no graphs in oligopolies. This is it. This is called a decision matrix, and this is central to all of oligopoly. This is RFRQ in oligopolies. So let me walk through exactly how we read this, make sure, because it's not too hard once you understand what's going on. On the left side, we have Randy's 2, or on the vertical, we have Randy's 2 options, confess or remain silent. On the horizontal, we have Kurt's 2 options, confess or remain silent. So if we look here, and we say, okay, if Randy confesses and Kurt confesses, we end up in this quadrant, and they both get 8 years. Okay, Randy remains silent, Kurt confesses, Kurt goes free, Randy gets 20 years. On the other side, if Randy confesses and Kurt remains silent, Kurt gets 20, Randy goes free. And finally, if they both remain silent, they both get 1 year. So the goal of both men in situations is obviously to limit their prison time. So what's the best thing for them to do is right here. The best thing for them to do is both remain silent. If we can, and we only get 1 year, it eliminates the chance of a long prison sentence, and we're only stuck with 1 year. But the problem becomes they can do better for themselves if they confess and the other person remains silent. Okay? If they confess and the other person they confess and the other person remains silent. Okay? This is game theory, and again, it's the study of interdependence. We said mutual interdependence before, but my best option is to remain silent to hopefully get 1 year or go free, but if the other guy confesses, as we'll see, we want to confess. Okay? This right here, this whole big thing is called the payoff matrix. It shows how the payoff of each participant in a two-player game depends on the actions of others. Mutual interdependence. Okay, so let me erase this and let me show you how we find what a dominant strategy is. And we will do plenty of these examples, so if it isn't real clear on the first one, don't stress too much. The payoff matrix here, how do we find someone's dominant strategy? Well, let's circle Randy in red here, and I'm going to circle all 4 of Randy's possibilities in red here. Okay? So if I want to find the one strategy that serves you best given what the other person or company, we'll do examples as companies do, that's called their dominant strategy. How do I find Randy's dominant strategy? Well, first, what I need to do is look at the 2 possibilities for Kurt. So first I want to say, what should Randy do if Kurt confesses? So cover up this side. Just look at this when Kurt confesses. Well, if Randy confesses, he goes to jail for 8 years. If Randy remains silent, he goes to jail for 20 years. So when Kurt confesses, right, and I'll put a green mark by this one, I guess, to show this is the best thing for Randy to do. Randy wants 8 years instead of 20, so it's much better for Randy to confess. The other possibility is if Kurt remains silent. So now we're looking over here. If Kurt remains silent and Randy confesses, he goes free. If Kurt remains silent and Randy remains silent, Randy gets 1 year. So in this case, confess, Randy goes free, remains silent, Randy gets 1 year. It's also better for Randy to go free. So in each of the 2 outcomes, it's better for Randy to confess. 8 years versus 20, free versus 1. Okay? So the dominant strategy, and we'll come back to Nash equilibrium, but the dominant strategy in this example for Randy is to confess. Now the interesting thing is, if he could know what the other person was going to do and collude, he could get 1 year. Now he's taking the risk of getting 8 years, but it's to avoid 20 years. Okay? Because he doesn't want to get the 20 years. So if he could collude and they both could talk and say, okay, we'll both remain silent, that's fine. But the problem becomes when the other person cheats on you, or in this example confesses, and if you remain silent, Randy would get stuck with 20 years and he doesn't want that. Okay? If we look at the same thing and we look at, I'm kind of running out of colors, but we'll go here with Kurt. And look what happens if we look at Kurt's possibilities. And this is a very simple example. The numbers will get more complex as we get into these, but perhaps we see, okay, how this is going to work out. How do we figure out what Kurt should do? Well, first take the 2 possibilities for Randy. If Randy confesses, Kurt gets 8 years if he confesses, or 20 years if he remains silent. So Kurt would rather get 8 years, and therefore he would rather confess. The other possibility is Kurt remaining silent, which is the bottom line, or the bottom row here. If Randy remains silent and Kurt confesses, he goes free. If Kurt also remains silent, he gets 1 year. So it's better for him to confess. So Kurt's dominant strategy in this example is also to confess. And we will look at examples in the future where there is no dominant strategy for one of them, or they both have dominant strategies, but they're in opposite sides. In this one, it just happens to be, again, that, and this is the simplest example we could use to start off with, that Randy's dominant strategy is to confess, and Kurt's is to confess. Okay? The Nash equilibrium, if you've seen the movie, actually A Beautiful Mind, it is about the life of John Nash. John Nash is a mathematician who actually wins the Nobel Prize in economics for developing something called the Nash equilibrium. This is a 2x2 matrix. It's as simple as it gets. His whole theory is obviously much more complicated since he won the Nobel Prize for it. But to really simplify it for Econ 101, he said that participants take actions that are best for them given the actions taken by the other players. Okay? In other words, you not cooperating, that's the key. Where do we end up if we don't cooperate? And that's the difference. If these 2 people take into consideration their dominant strategies, this is where we're going to end up, right? Because this is both their dominant strategies. So the dominant strategies for both of them is to confess, and so that is the Nash equilibrium, if they both do their dominant strategies. Now, Nash equilibrium gets a little more complicated if they don't both have a dominant strategy. We will walk through those in the coming days. Don't worry about that yet. Okay? But the Nash equilibrium, the key to understanding Nash equilibrium is not cooperating. Okay? Because if they were to collude, what would they do is they would talk and they would say, okay, the best we can do together is each get only 1 year. So this is the best option if they are able to collude and minimize their jail time. But if they are not colluding, if they don't trust each other, they're going to, for lack of a better term, compete, and their best option is to confess, okay? For Wednesday, watch these two videos, do the Edpuzzle video, which I think is really good, and then Thursday we'll do a bunch of examples. We'll figure out a time, and I'll kind of lay that out tomorrow, what works for all of us that we can get together. Even I'd love for everyone to be there. I know our schedules don't always match up, but maybe if we can say, hey, we're going to do this at noon, because I think game theory is really simple if we can find a time to go together, okay? So I'll post this one, watch these two videos, then watch the Edpuzzle, do that, and I'll make it all due by 11:59 Wednesday night, okay? Thanks a lot, guys. Look forward to talking to you later. Have a good one.